I think you're doing amazingly well, really. And the thing that's quite, immediately striking is how engaged the community is here. Like, all the structures are in place, the social structures in terms of community groups and organised community groups with organised voices. So it's really easy for me to come into this, into Wakatipu, and understand what's going on really quickly, because I can pick up the reports, I can see, I can pick up the way to go documentation, I can see the evidence of the consultation, and people are thinking and talking and contributing. So yeah, I think that's really healthy, really good. So yeah, I think you're going, the issues here are because everyone wants to be here. And so, you've got a lot of growth, and you've had a lot of growth, and it's speed wobble stuff. So all of that can be worked through, I think.
I guess everybody likes to think their problems are special and worse than everybody else's problems. And I think that's true of Queenstown. We think, we have special problems. Do you think that's correct, or are we just facing predictable issues given that we do live in such a beautiful place?
No, I think that's true. I think a lot of the issues that Queenstown is facing are faced by lots of people in New Zealand and probably the world. But for instance, I was reading that quality of life survey that QLTC did, where it said, I think just over 20% of people found it difficult to access mental health services at a time and place that were convenient to them. And I think if you asked people living in Northland and Kaitaia or Kaikohe, or the same would be said. So there's a whole range of issues around health and access to health services. That's not different than many places in outside the main centres in New Zealand. In terms of housing affordability, that's the same in many places in New Zealand. Yes, it's acute here, but it's acute in lots of other places. Transport, even though the roads are clogged at peak hours, it's still a hell of a lot better than other places in New Zealand. And the fact that 40% of people in Queenstown are born outside of New Zealand, that's not dissimilar to other parts of New Zealand too. What is a bit different, I think, is that so few people, that I was just reading that 53% of people in that survey have only lived in Queenstown for 5 years or less, and something like 30% have only been here for 2 years or less. So I think therein lies the telling story. So I've been living here for 3 months. My voice is common, my voice and my feelings about living here probably echoed by a goodly proportion of people. So I think we've got a group of people here who've lived here a long time and they understand it, and we've got another group who have quite a different perception because they've just moved. So there's probably some little bit of tussle and challenges there, I think.
I guess like everywhere else, Queenstown goes through clear cycles, ups and downs. And this year, especially being an election year, there's a decided anti-growth type thing building, because we do have infrastructure issues. Is it going to be really tough being an advocate for business in that particular phase of our cycles?
I hope not. No, look, you can't separate business from the community, because everybody works for a business who are working, generally speaking. And even if you're in a social agency, a government department or a charity, chances are you're still benefiting from a business through taxpayer subsidies or because of funding. And so you can't separate it. So the people who run businesses here are affected in exactly the same way as the people who are working for businesses here. They still have their kids still up the road playing soccer. They still have to get their kids around. They've still got all those other issues that we're all challenged by: water, litter, pollution, noise. All those things affect everybody, whether you're a business owner or not. So we have to find a way through these growth issues together. And I guess I see my role for the Chamber as actually being an active participant in the conversation. No one's got the right answers on this. We have to actually work together to find our way through. Therein lies the challenge. So that won't be easy at times. And at times, I'm going to say things that people kind of disagree with, or they've got a different view. But as long as we keep listening to each other, I think that's the main thing.
I guess we have one of those situations right here, right now. There's a big discussion now at the airport. I can see it from both sides. They're a big employer. We love the convenience of being able to just hop on a plane. It brings in tourists who spend money. it's a very important community asset. But on the other hand, would you have Paris Airport right next to the Eiffel Tower? And there's an argument that it's located where it is because of an accident of history. How do we build bridges so that the community, including businesses, can work together to solve complicated problems like that?
Well, I know what you don't do is you don't discard new ideas out of because they don't fit your view and because the rhetoric says this. And what I see happening a little bit here, which I think probably I can, that the newer arrivals in town can challenge a bit, is there's a lot of people who've lived here a long time have an intuitive knowledge of the past and they understand the area really well. What I'd like to see is a bit more conversation about the data and expertise upon which to make decisions. We're not the first people to go through this. There is evidence and research around the world on how these things have been, handled for growth. And I'd like to see some of the opinion. And I'm not saying that intuitive knowledge or opinion or experience isn't valuable, but it's good to balance that with some evidence and data and expert views. And I think we're a little bit prone to heading down that sort of, in my opinion, this is the best thing. Now, I've got a broad CV. I've done quite a few things in my life, but planning airports or planning taxes, how to actually design a tax or design where an airport should be, neither of those things are on my CV. I would be expecting to, as part of that, to be part of the conversation about commenting on expert views and commenting on data that says this is the likely impact if we do scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, and looking at that and looking at the evidence and the data to support the decision making. And that's because I have and because the other people here that are, that have arrived to this area in the last 2 years, we're all haven't got the benefit of long history here and any knowledge that you've developed over that time. We have to go back to the evidence. And so that's the approach I'm going to take. It's like, well, actually, I hear what you're saying, I respect your experience, but actually I'd quite like to hear what the experts have to say about this too. And then somewhere in the middle there, we make, we, the chamber and the team I lead and the board, will sort of contribute to that conversation.
So now you have got your feet under the desk, I guess one final question. What would be your 3 targets for the first year in Queenstown? What will be the things where you can sit back after 12 months and say, well, I did that, I achieved those goals?
The first one is make sure people know who I am. I don't think, I want to be approachable and I want people to feel they can give me a call if they're concerned about something. Secondly, so I'm spending quite a lot of time just getting to know people and that sort of stuff. Number 2, I think the challenge for a membership organisation, it's hard sometimes for people to understand the advocacy piece. So when you're working on advocacy or contributing to those conversations, the timeframes are long, so it's hard to keep members engaged. Like, well, what are you actually doing? So I want to. There's some here and now things I'd like to do to balance it with that long stuff. So the here and now stuff is I'd like to understand a lot more about how we can optimise public transport right here, right now. Not building new roads or all the longer term infrastructure projects, but the right here, right now, we have buses going. How do we make them work better for commuters, getting people to work and home from work, making sure that our active, we're working really closely with council and ORC and employers to make sure that people are optimised to get to work and back as fast as they can. So real practical stuff, I'd like to work on that. And then obviously the third term is actually continue to look at that bigger housing piece and be supportive in that area, and that's again one of those longer term projects, I guess.